long ball. It's going to go for a touchdown. The game's over. Webster Slaughter.
Beckham will go for the score. Unbelievable.
45-40. Run, William, run. He's got blockers in front. 5. Touchdown. Joshua Cribbs turns disaster into a score.
Sight wants it all on this one for Logan, and he is there.
Jim Brown to the 30. Jim Brown is going to go in for another touchdown.
The Cleveland Browns select Baker Mayfield.
Wow.
It is Baker Mayfield.
I woke up feeling dangerous.
Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to the 1085 Gridiron podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Joki. Today is our 100th episode. I can't believe that we've reached this point. When we started this about 2 years ago, we started planning in. I think our first episode was around March or April, and I can't believe we're at this point already. We endured an 0-16 season on this podcast. This past season was much better, obviously. We finally have our quarterback, which is absolutely wonderful. When we started this, we actually did not have that, and we were wondering what the hell was going to happen. But obviously, I can't do this alone. I haven't done this alone. I have my fantastic co-host, Jack McCurry of the North Coast Sports. Jack, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. 100 episodes. That is so crazy. To think back 2 years ago when you started this, and I was the guest for the first couple of episodes, and then I think it was by about episode 5 or 6 you asked me to jump on as a host. And much like the Browns, we have made plenty of strides in these last 2 years, and hopefully we continue to make more as the Browns do. And hopefully we can get towards the top, and right when the Browns are getting towards the top, and hopefully winning a Super Bowl for the city of Cleveland.
Absolutely. And, when we first started this, I kind of figured at some point you would be the co-host. I had just started and had a couple random guests, and I obviously knew I couldn't do it alone because that would be an absolute disaster. And, we've been friends for 3 years now, maybe a little bit longer. And it was a perfect match, I would say, in finding my co-host. So I'm glad it's our 100th episode. Throughout this episode, we're going to have some messages from various guests that have been on our show before. Some guys that are well known in the Browns community. One guy we've had on our show multiple times. So we'll just play those at random points in this episode. Don't think we went off on some terrible tangent when you hear these messages or whatnot. So we were gracious for these guys to stop by and say some nice things and wish us luck. And, with all that, it's been a couple weeks since we talked. And in that time, there's some major news that went down, and that's where we're going to start. The Browns signed Kareem Hunt, formerly with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think this came as a shock to everybody, especially with, his shocking release last season. Everything that went down in that hotel in Cleveland. I think we were all pretty surprised that the Browns decided to take a chance on him. We thought that they eliminated most of the headaches, getting rid of Josh Gordon. I didn't think that they would, kind of bring this kind of distraction in. Jack, when you look at this from the non-football side, what is your opinion of this move, and do you think that this could potentially be a decent move from the Browns, at least on the non-football side of things?
From the non-football side of things, I don't like this move at all. I really don't. I get why Dorsey took a chance. And if anybody doesn't know, Dorsey drafted Hunt back in the 3rd round back in 2017 before he was let go as GM of the Chiefs. I get why he took a chance on him. Everybody deserves a second chance. I'm going to say that first and foremost. But I don't like this because I don't support, people that do what Kareem Hunt did. And, I've seen a lot of people, being supportive of this move. And a lot of it was because of what Hunt is as a football player. This isn't about what Hunt is as a football player. And credit to Dorsey. The day it happened, he stood up in front of the media. First of all, he did it, for I think 15 minutes behind closed doors, and then he went 15 minutes out in front of the cameras and addressed it. It takes a lot of guts to do what Dorsey did and to take a chance on a guy like Kareem Hunt. But I just don't get it from a football perspective. I do to a degree because I know how talented Kareem Hunt is. I liked him coming out of Toledo, but I just do not think, like, if he gets a second chance, and we've seen other guys like him, like Joe Mixon, Tyreek Hill, they all got second chances there in the league. And then, someone brought this up, and it's about a guy we'll talk about later in the show, Colin Kaepernick. You mean to tell me that you can't kneel for the national anthem and practically not get another chance in the NFL, but if you hit a woman, it's okay? Yeah, I don't like that. And I know that, there's guys coming out in the draft that the Browns could have targeted that have done the same kind of thing. I'm all for giving a second chance, but it doesn't mean I don't like it. Because I don't like it. It's one of those moves where I just kind of shake my head, but, we'll see how it all plays out. Because honestly, when you look at it for 2019, Kareem Hunt might not even see the field for the majority of 2019. So, it's just a wait and see move, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I don't like it. I understand it for football reasons, but for non-football reasons, obviously what happened is inexcusable. It is forgivable to some extent if he does the right things to earn that forgiveness. I don't know if anybody deserves a second chance in that kind of situation. I would say he has to earn it. Hopefully he's doing the right things off the field to earn the second chance. And, Dorsey mentioned that he's been doing some kind of counseling. I guess he's been he had an alcohol problem that he's trying to take care of and whatnot. So, hopefully he's doing the right things off the field now to position himself to where this never happens again. The thing with Dorsey is he said that he's on a very strict protocol. If he deviates from that protocol, I would imagine there's a zero tolerance thing where he won't be here. Kind of like they had with Josh Gordon, which was ultimately lying to Dorsey, was the straw that broke the camel's back on that one. So, it'll be interesting to see how this whole entire situation plays off. Now, I said I understand it from football reasons because Kareem is a really good football player. Now, if you just want to talk about the football side of this and disassociated from the non-football side, Kareem's a really good football player. He's extremely athletic. He's a threat to run the ball and catch the ball out of the backfield. He is extremely talented. Jack, from the football side of this, they already have Nick Chubb as their main running back. They also have Duke Johnson. Now, you did mention that Kareem Hunt might not see the field for the majority of the season. Adam Schefter said possibly between 10 and 12 games he could be suspended. Now, the Browns, I think we expect the Browns to compete for a playoff spot. So around that time, week 10, 11, 12, 13, Kareem could be joining this football team in the middle of a playoff run. Do you expect him to, basically being on the sidelines for a full year, be able to contribute in some capacity? And how effective do you think he could be after probably sitting for almost 365 days?
It's definitely going to be interesting. We've seen what Josh Gordon could do, sitting out for almost 2 years. If you hope that Kareem Hunt stays in shape. And once he gets out on that field, obviously he's going to have to get into game shape. So that's going to take a couple weeks. So you look at it, he's suspended 10 to 12 games. You get into December, He's going to have to get a couple weeks to get into game shape. Then you're looking at probably week 16 or 17. You're hoping the Browns are still in the playoff hunt. And at that point, you get a fresh set of legs, and you look at what the Los Angeles Rams did, bringing in C.J. Anderson and, having those fresh legs. He was dominant running the ball, like probably the best of his career. You would hope that if he comes in and if he can contribute anything to this football team down the stretch, and if the Browns make it into the playoffs, having his freshness, I think would only make Nick Chubb better, would make Duke Johnson better, and I think it would ultimately make the offense better. You've seen what Kareem Hunt can do in about 1 3/4 of a season. 3,000 all-purpose yards, 25 total touchdowns. He only fumbled the ball once on 532 touches. That just shows you how much of a great football player he is. But at this point, and much like it was with Josh Gordon, I just hope Kareem Hunt gets his life back in order. Obviously, you mentioned that he has an alcohol problem and obviously the other problems. If he can get that first and foremost set in the straight and narrow, that's great. And then whatever he can bring to this team at the end of 2019 and into 2020, because we didn't even mention that, he'll be a restricted free agent. So the Browns pretty much have him through 2020. If he can get his life in order and then whatever he does on the football field as a bonus, I think that would be good for Kareem Hunt.
The Browns could even make it to where they don't play Kareem Hunt at all, even if he is suspended only 10 to 12 games. And because he is a restricted free agent next year, I would think that they would be able to get a relatively decent draft choice for Kareem Hunt next offseason if they just want to hold on to him just for trade purposes.
Yeah, definitely. If you look at that aspect, John Dorsey probably looks at it as, if Hunt doesn't play, I have a trade chip. And we've seen what Dorsey does with these trade chips since he's been to Cleveland. So that's one way to look at it, obviously. But I also think that Dorsey has it in the back of his mind, if everything goes well, he's thinking, I have Nick Chubb, who are going to be our lead back. I have Duke Johnson, who's a good runner and a great receiver, and then I have Kareem Hunt, who does that as well. And I could have potentially the most dominant trio of running backs that the league's ever seen together on the field at the same time. And I'm sure Freddie Kitchens is thinking that as well down the road once Hunt is eligible to play again.
Last question on this topic. For you personally, if Kareem Hunt joins this football team around, week 12, 13 or so, sometime in that time period, would it put any kind of black eye on a Browns playoff run for you if he's a major part of that and of that run that they could go on?
It's tough to say. I mean, obviously, when he meets every time, once he meets with the media and, a spring training camp, and then the first time he's eligible to be back, the story's going to get rehashed over and over again. So, I mean, it's obviously something none of us are going to forget or forgive him at this point. But, if he does come in and he's a contributor down the stretch, time heals all wounds in any instance. I honestly can say that. I mean, none of us are going to forget what he did last February, but if he does come in and help the Browns to a degree, I mean, I think people just kind of put it on the back burner for a degree. Like, I will just say that. I'm not condoning what Hunt did at all, but if he does help, I think people will remember him for helping the Browns get to the playoffs more than that incident, which is unfortunate, but that's just a sign of the times today.
And you look back in recent history, you had in the 2016 World Series, Aroldis Chapman with the Chicago Cubs. I think that's a little more personal for us because the Indians were in it, but, you look at what he did in the offseason before that. He had that lengthy suspension when he was still with the Yankees before he got traded. And, there were a lot of people that said he shouldn't be allowed to be eligible for the postseason after doing something like that. Do you think, and I don't know, I don't want to go too much down the rabbit hole here, but guys who get suspended during the season for PEDs, domestic violence, any kind of personal conduct policy, drugs, whatever it is. Do you think that those players should be eligible for the postseason?
Well, I know in baseball, if you do PEDs and you get suspended, you're not eligible for the playoffs. Because I remember, who was it? He was with the Indians. Was it Cabrera? He wasn't eligible.
It was what the heck was his name? He was the outfielder. I'll think of it while you're talking. But go ahead.
Okay, but he was suspended during the season, and then he wasn't eligible for the postseason. So I get that with PEDs, and I think that should be definitely. But also, I think much like that, if you get busted for domestic violence or anything, or I think to that degree, you shouldn't be eligible for the playoffs. So I think that's something that will probably need to be changed at some point in all sports. I think because domestic violence is becoming a more common thing, which is a sad state of the times in this country and in sports. But yeah, if you get busted for something like that, and as well as PEDs, if you're suspended during the regular season, you shouldn't be eligible for the playoffs either, in my opinion.
The guy's name was Abraham Almonte.
That's it. That's what I was thinking of.
All
right. Okay. I'm sick, but I'll go ahead and let's do this thing. All right. No, we're here. Let's do it. All right. Here we go. Stephen Thomas, Burger King, take one. Our flame broiled patties are. Wait, it's not Burger King? Well, what the hell am I doing here? Why'd you drag me out of bed, man? 100 episodes of what? Of a podcast. Ooh, big whoop. All right. No, hey, you know what? We're here. We'll record it. Oh, man. No, let's do it. You can edit out that other stuff. Here we go. 100 episodes. Take one. Hey, Jim and Jerry, it's a great job doing That's not their names. You know what? Whatever. God, just you fix it on the other. No, you fix it in post. I don't. Fine. Anthony and Jim. Jake. Jack. Anthony and Jack. All right. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Hey, Anthony and Jack, Stephen Thomas here from @Browns Mock Draft. Just wanted to say congratulations on the huge, major, and unbelievable accomplishment of recording 100 episodes of your podcast, the 1085. It's been fantastic. Every time you guys have had me on, I always have fun. I love listening to you guys talk the Browns. And in all sincerity and seriousness, congratulations. It's a lot of work, I know, and you're a couple of the good ones. And I appreciate you guys having me on. Hopefully we can do it again in the future when we're talking about a playoff run. Congratulations on 100 episodes, and go Browns.
Well, we absolutely appreciate that message from Stephen Thomas. I tell you what, the dude is a comedian by trade, and that message that he left us, absolutely hilarious, fighting through that nasty sickness that he had. Hopefully he's getting better now, but we thank Stephen for sending those well wishes our way. Now that we're done discussing Kareem Hunt, I think the biggest thing where the Browns are now is what do they do with Duke Johnson? Because last season they finally got him involved a little bit more, not as much as I wanted them to, but I would say they started doing a decent job, and it was correlated with Freddie taking over. Duke is a very versatile running back. I think he excels at catching the football out of the backfield, whether you want to line him up in the slot, whether you want to put him in motion, do things like that. But now that they have signed Kareem Hunt, where do you think this leaves Duke Johnson and his future with the Cleveland Browns?
Well, I wrote about this on the NorthCoastSports.com, and there's been talk since the signing of Kareem Hunt. There's been people saying, "Are the Browns going to trade Duke Johnson now?" Right now, they shouldn't, and I think at least for the 2019 season, they should not trade Duke Johnson. First of all, we don't know how long the Kareem Hunt suspension is. If it's going to be 10 to 12 games, as Adam Schefter suggested, then there's no reason to trade Duke Johnson. You need depth at the running back position. We all know injuries can happen at any time. Nick Chubb has an injury history. We hope he doesn't get hurt, definitely. But, and Duke is, like you said, he's a versatile playmaker at the running back position. 47 catches in each of his first 4 seasons. He averages at least 4.3 yards per carry. I mean, last year was bizarre because his touches went down significantly, but he had his best season in terms of yards per touch. He had 7.2 yards per touch. His previous best was 2016 where he had 6.9. So, and, he found a way to get into the end zone. And it seemed like once Kitchens took over as the offensive play caller, Duke did get the ball more to a degree until like the last couple of weeks where you've seen a heavy dosage of Chubb, and then you didn't see as much of Duke Johnson. But I think he is a key part of this offense going forward, and by no means should they trade him unless they are completely blown away in a trade offer where it would be foolish for them to pass it up.
Yeah, it'd be, if they get some kind of offer like that, or if they find somebody in the draft that they really like to be their third running back, or if they find somebody after the draft or in free agency or anything, that would be a cheaper option for Duke Johnson, and they're able to get some value for him. I could almost see them looking at a player on somebody else's roster and maybe flipping Duke Johnson for that player if there's somebody that they like. But for me, I wouldn't trade him. I think he's a great insurance policy. He's a fantastic playmaker for the Browns, and we've all been clamoring for the last 2 or 3 years to get him more involved, and I think over the course of the last half of the season they were able to do that. And when it comes to Duke Johnson, the more the merrier. The more playmakers you can put on the field, the more defenses have to game plan for said playmakers, and it only helps you out in the long run. You look at, you mentioned the Rams and C.J. Anderson earlier. Duke Johnson's the guy that could fill that role. If you give a heavy dose of Nick Chubb throughout the entire season, and Duke Johnson has fresh legs towards that later half of the season, that's a very big plus for the Browns to have for a fresh running back like that can help put away football games. So it'll be very interesting to see what they do. I don't expect Duke Johnson to be traded. At least to me, the Browns shouldn't do it. What do you think in terms of value they could get for Duke Johnson in terms of a draft pick or another player on a different roster?
That's difficult. You look at it. Obviously, look at what Deshaun Kaiser landed us last year. He landed us a potential Pro Bowl safety in Demarius Randall. So, I would have to go through rosters and think like, what, maybe you get a guy like Demarius Randall who's coming up on the end of his contract, hadn't panned out for an insert team here, and you take a chance on him, much like Dorsey did with Randall, with Brashad Perriman, with Greg Robinson, and you try to make a reclamation project out of it. In terms of a draft pick, I couldn't tell you offhand like recent running back trades, but I think like maybe like a 4th or 5th round, maybe a conditional where it can bump up to a 3 if Duke meets certain incentives. But yeah, I would say like a mid-round pick at best. Duke Johnson's obviously not a starting running back, and it's not clear what his value would be across the NFL. So I would say a mid-round pick would probably be the highest thing we could get for him.
Yeah, I would say that the bottom of the 3rd round is probably the best that you're going to get. This is kind of a lesser known running back draft class, so that could boost up his value a little bit, but not much. But if it's me, I'm not trading Duke Johnson at all, and I just want to do it. All right, we got another message for you. This one is from Jeff Lloyd, the host of Locked On Browns. So here's Jeff Lloyd.
Hey guys, how everybody doing? This is Jeff Lloyd, host of Locked On Browns podcast. I do want to give a big shout out to my guys, Anthony and Jack. Two real stand-up guys, put in a lot of hard work, reaching the 100 episode mark here for 1085 Gridiron. Guys go hard, week in, week out, trying to give you the best content they can. Sometimes, you got to cover some controversial issues, whether it's a Kareem Hunt, or you get to go through a season like 2018 where it was, when will this misery end? Is there ever a sign? And Anthony and Jack have done a great job in that. And I think all of us in the Browns podcasting community want to congratulate them on their 100th episode. But I think we all want to, enjoy it together that, look, we're finally talking some meaningful football here with this Cleveland Browns franchise. Anthony and Jack, once a week, whether it's twice a week, special episodes, emergency episodes, going to do that episode in, episode out, continue to provide you fans and listeners with great content. So, Anthony, Jack, here's to 100. Here's to the next couple hundred, guys. Congratulations.
We appreciate those kind words from Jeff, and hopefully we can get him back on the podcast soon. He is the host of the Locked On Browns podcast. And if you guys haven't listened to it yet, hopefully you are living under a wall, because there really shouldn't be any explanation for not listening to it. Jeff does a fantastic job over there, and we thank him for those kind words. All right, we're recording this on Tuesday, February 19th. And today the franchise tag period opened up. So what we're going to do is we have a list of 10 players from across the NFL that we think could get franchise tagged. Obviously, the Browns have a lot of money to spend in free agency. So we're going to go through this list and discuss each player and see if they would be good fits for a good fit for the Browns, possibly, if they don't get tagged, and maybe spending some of those free agent dollars on them. Now, these players obviously can't get tagged and traded, kind of with the Jarvis Landry situation last season. He was franchise tagged, and the Browns traded for him and then gave him an extension. So these are all that's possible with these players too, if they were to get franchised and the team decided to trade them. But well, let's first start off with 3 pass rushers. I can't say how many times over the first 100 episodes I've said you can never have enough pass rushers. And the first one is DeMarcus Lawrence of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, DeMarcus was tagged last year. So if he is tagged again, it's going to be close to a $20 million tag for him. The Cowboys are hoping that they can get some kind of extension worked out so they don't have to tag him. But, Jack, if for some reason DeMarcus is not tagged, I would think that he would be a fantastic fit on the opposite side of Myles Garrett.
Absolutely. I mean, if he were to somehow become available, you look at all the teams that have mounted cap space, the Jets, the Colts, the Browns, they would be throwing the Brinks truck at DeMarcus Lawrence. You look at what he's done throughout his career so far, a second-round pick in 2014. He's had 34 sacks over the span of his career so far, including 10.5 last year. The last 2 years, he's really come on as a pass rusher. He started out a little slow with the Cowboys the first couple of years, but he's really turned into a fine pass rusher. And you brought it up. You line him up opposite Myles Garrett, and teams, especially the AFC North opponents, are going to be game planning to try to stop those two. And if you had those two, it's only going to make, I think, the interior, the defensive line, which obviously we need to address this offseason. Guys like Ogunjobi and whoever we pick up, whether it's in free agency or the draft, are just going to capitalize on the pressures or the double teams that Lawrence and Garrett would have to get from offensive lines.
And you would also open up the linebackers as well when you send them on a blitz, if those guys are commanding double teams as well. I would think DeMarcus would be a great fit. I don't expect him to hit the free agency market at all. I expect the Cowboys to either tag him or work out some kind of long-term deal. In my opinion, I don't think there's any chance that they let him go, especially with what they have going down there in Dallas. They expect to be competing for the playoffs every year, and if they were to lose DeMarcus Lawrence, those playoff chances would take a drastic hit. The next guy is very intriguing because John Dorsey drafted this guy. However, they already mentioned that he's probably going to get franchised by the Kansas City Chiefs, and that is Dee Ford. Ford would be a fantastic addition to this defense. However, as I mentioned, I don't expect him to even sniff free agency. I would think within the next week or so, the Kansas City Chiefs are absolutely going to be putting that franchise tag onto Dee Ford.
Yeah, definitely. I can't see the Chiefs, who are, reassembling their defense or switching to a 4-3 base. I can't see them letting Dee Ford go. You look at him, he's been up and down, much like DeMarcus Lawrence was. But, in between the downs, he's had double-digit sack seasons. 2016, he had 10 sacks. And then this year, I think, was his breakout year in the NFL. 13 sacks, and he also had 7 forced fumbles. I mean, Dee Ford was dominant, and the Chiefs' defense wasn't always great, but when it was because of guys like Dee Ford who were bringing it every single play. And obviously, he's going to get a big payday out of this, whether it's just a 1-year franchise tag or a multi-year contract. Unfortunately, like you said, he won't even get to see free agency, so. If he did, I would be sure that Dorsey would be making that phone call and trying to pitch Ford to come to Cleveland, but it looks like he's going to stay in Kansas City.
The next guy on the list is very interesting because the Houston Texans have a few guys that they're going to have to pay this offseason, and it could be a case where the cap situation in Houston could be too much for them to franchise tag Jadeveon Clowney. If he's not franchised, I will personally drive the Brinks truck all the way down to Texas or wherever it is that he lives and dump it on his front lawn and say, welcome to Cleveland, because adding him across from Myles Garrett would be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Houston, they're going into free agency with about $78 million in cap space. But you also have to look at, they have to save some money for next offseason when they'll have to extend Deshaun Watson. So they have a difficult decision, I would think, at this point. Do they, try to re-sign Tyrann Mathieu and look to add a pass rusher in the draft? Or, do they go ahead franchise Clowney, try to re-sign Matthew, and then, look for other ways to, create some cap space so that they're able to re-sign Watson to a contract extension next offseason. I'm with you. If Clowney does become available, he is one of the definite targets on the list for me personally when I'm looking at potential free agents for the Browns. I know that it's going to cost a lot. There's no doubt about it as a pass rusher. But when you look at Clowney the last couple of years, since he's finally gotten healthy, he has shown that he was worth that number 1 pick back in 2014. He's had 3 straight seasons of 17 QB hits or more. During that time span, he's got 24.5 sacks and, many tackles for a loss. So it's not just getting after the quarterback. It's showing that he's disruptive as either a pass rusher or a run stopper. And if you get him opposite Myles Garrett, you talk about a scary situation. That could be a definite scary situation with Clowney and Garrett on the pass rush.
And when you look at the rest of their cap situation, I think when you look at the Houston Texans, I think they need to spend some money on the offensive line. I think that is necessary for them. So there will be some money that has to go there. 2 of their top corners are free agents, Kareem Jackson and Kayvon Webster are free agents. Also, Sharice Wright as well. So, they're going to have to spend some money in their secondary, especially if they lose Teron Matthew as well. So they have a lot of tough decisions to make this offseason in regards to free agency. But if for some reason Clowney becomes available, to me, it's an absolutely no-brainer for them to bring him in. All right, the next message we got is from Mac Robinson. I know Mac's been on our show a couple of times. He was gracious enough a few weeks ago to stop by and give us a live report from down in Mobile during the Senior Bowl week for practices. And here's Mac Robinson with his message for us.
What's up, guys? This is Mac Robinson from the Hurry Up, the Browns Wire podcast. And I hear that it's the 1085 Gridiron Browns podcast 100th episode. I figured I got to stop by. I got to make sure that I say congratulations genuinely to both Jack and Anthony. Both of these guys have been doing some great work, and they've been working really hard. And to get to 100 episodes is a feat, especially going through and covering as much as they have been. They are great guys, genuinely, and I'm so happy for the success that they've had. I genuinely love coming on. I know they've had me on a couple times, but I just want to say thank you to both of those guys for having me on, first of all, and second of all, keep up the great work, because honestly, you guys are doing a fantastic job. I love to see how you guys are kind of progressing here as the Browns are getting more successful and you guys are getting successful. So I'm really happy for you guys, and keep up the good work.
Well, I want to thank Mac for joining us briefly and giving those kind words. We appreciate Mac. He does an awesome job over with the Browns Wire, also with this podcast as well, so you guys should definitely check that out. The next guy we're going to talk about is a Cleveland native. He is Frank Clark. He went to Glenville High School. From there, he went up to Michigan. He kind of had a checkered past, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But Frank is a heck of a defensive end. In his 4 seasons, he has 35 sacks. Last season, he had 13 sacks while starting all 16 games. He's a heck of a football player, and as we've gone through his entire list, I can't reiterate, you can never have enough pass rushers. So he would be an interesting guy to pair across from Myles Garrett. He's only 25 years old. He'll be 26 when the season starts. But these guys entering free agency, being 24, 25, 26 years old, to me, these are the guys you want to look for. But with Frank, there's no doubt there's a talent on the field with him. Jack, I would imagine most of the questions are off the field with his history up at the University of Michigan.
Absolutely. I mean, if anybody doesn't know the story of Frank Clark, he went to Michigan, obviously. In 2012, he was suspended from the team for felony second-degree home invasion for stealing a MacBook Air. I think something happened where he didn't have to serve any jail time, obviously, and he was able to come back to the team. And then in 2014, he was arrested for domestic violence, and that's what got him kicked off the Michigan team ultimately. And that's ultimately why he was a late second round pick, because the talent was clearly there when he was at Michigan. You could see that he was a dominant pass rusher and could get after the quarterback. And he started out slow his first year, only had like 3 sacks with the Seahawks, but like you said, he's gradually gotten better and better, where in 2016, he only started in 5 games. He played 15, but he had 10 sacks, and he had 18 QB hits. 2017, he had 9 sacks, but he had 10 tackles for a loss and 21 QB hits. And then last year was his best season as a pro, started all 16 games, had an interception, 3 forced fumbles, 13 sacks, and 27 QB hits. So he's very disruptive, much like Clowney, much like DeMarcus Lawrence, guys we've already talked about. He could ultimately be a guy that, the Seahawks are mulling. Do they give the franchise tag to? Interesting side note, Jeff Darlington of ESPN said on NFL Live that he thinks Cleveland's the landing spot for Clark. And it just makes me wonder, was Cleveland, his upbringing, was that a reason why he did some of the things he did at Michigan. And, we talked about Kareem Hunt coming back home, and is that a bad situation for him? That would be the one thing. Is Clark coming back home to Cleveland a good thing? If it is, if he's surrounded by his family and, Ted Ginn Sr. being there as a mentor for him, somebody he can reach out to, being within the city, then that's great. Bring him in here. He'd be a great upgrade to the defense. But if him coming home is a bad thing, and I'm hoping Dorsey and, the front office executives are doing their homework, if it's a bad thing, then Clark should probably not come back home. But if he was to come home and it's a good thing, then I think it's a great thing for the Browns defense.
Yeah, I think up there in Seattle they have a very good culture when it comes to players and personalities and whatnot. I mean, there's a lot of guys that have certain personalities up there, such as Earl Thomas and Richard Sherman when he was there. But all those guys up there play hard. Pete Carroll does a fantastic job with that defense, and you really don't hear too many problems going on up there. And, when you look at Frank Clark and the Seattle Seahawks, I mean, they have a ton of free agents that they have to take care of this season. They have 14 unrestricted free agents. I think they have a combined 16 restricted free agents / exclusive rights free agents. So, the real question is can they afford to tie up over $18 million, which is the franchise tag number for a defensive end, on one player when they have so many key free agents? It's going to be a real interesting solution up there. And I think you mentioned to me that the Seahawks haven't used a franchise tag in a number of years, so it's not really how they operate up there. So I think he's somebody that could definitely hit the open market, and to me it would make a lot of sense for the Browns to bring him in if he does.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at all these pass rushers that could potentially be available. If, the Browns can get one of them and then, find one in the middle rounds of the draft, whether it's in the interior on the pass rush, our defense is definitely going to be a lot better, I think, once the all season's over with.
Well, let's jump to one more, to another pass rusher. And there's a report that came down, I want to say it was Monday or Tuesday when we were discussing it, that it is unlikely that the New England Patriots are going to tag Trey Flowers, their defensive end. Trey Flowers had a fantastic season this year with the Patriots, and he's another guy. You look at this crop of defensive ends in free agency. The guys we talked about already: DeMarcus Lawrence, D. Ford, Jadeveon Clowney, Frank Clark, and now Trey Flowers, and we'll talk about Dante Fowler in a little bit. When you look at all these pass rushers that are available in free agency, it's a very interesting market, and you have to wonder if the Patriots think that they could get another guy cheaper than Trey Flowers, or if they have another replacement lined up, or what the deal is. But I can't see the New England Patriots giving that much money, tying up that much money into one guy, especially when they have to make that decision whether they're going to tag him or Trent Brown, who we'll talk about here in a couple seconds. So the Patriots have a very hard decision, I would say, determining who they're going to tag and if they're going to tag them.
Right, and I mean, you can even throw in Steven Gostkowski in the mix there. I think the Patriots do have a decision to make, because they have three guys that they can franchise tag, and they're all talented, to say the least. I think it looks like Gostkowski's going to be the front runner there, but when you look at Trey Flowers, I mean, 4th round pick back in 2015 out of Arkansas, Belichick seems to find these guys, and he'll get rid of their predecessor and plug these guys in, and they'll just continue. The machine just continues to roll in New England. You look at Flowers' numbers, he's never had double-digit sack season, but he gets after the quarterback. And you look at QB hits, the last 2 seasons, he's had 45 combined. And then 2016, with his first year of significant playing time, he had 14. In the postseason, he's been just as dominant, if not more dominant in the postseason. This recent one, they won the Super Bowl. He had 2 sacks. and he had 6 QB hits in 3 games. And he had 3 tackles for a loss. So he's disruptive back there in the backfield. And it seems like, Belichick is a defensive guru. He knows where to put those guys in the right situation and let them succeed. I mean, we even seen in the Super Bowl, Danny Shelton, former Brown who was quiet the majority of the season. He had a big play in the Super Bowl. Belichick knows where to put those guys in the right place at the right time. So Trey Flowers is definitely an interesting signing. I know Jack Duffin was on with us a couple weeks ago, and he absolutely wants the Browns to go after him in free agency. And it'll be is he going to break the mold of guys leaving New England and having success elsewhere? That's one thing that Dorsey and the front office and obviously the coaching staff needs to determine if they're going to put in a lot of money into Flowers, because he's definitely going to have a big market when it comes to free agency.
And another player that they have that's going to have a big market when it comes to free agency is Trent Brown. And, they're going to have to make that decision. If they're going to tag one of these two guys, it's going to come down to, I think, one of these two over Gostkowski. But, Trent Brown's probably the top left tackle in free agency if he were to hit the open market. I don't really think there's any question about that. We don't know what the Browns are going to do with Greg Robinson. I know they hope to bring him back, and they've had discussions, but they really haven't gone well so far. And, the Browns have to have a plan for left tackle. I know there's a lot of people that believe it's not as necessary to have a great one with a quarterback like Baker Mayfield who gets the ball out quickly. But I think it's nice to have that insurance policy, especially when you're facing some of these top pass rushers in the NFL, to have that guy protecting Baker Mayfield. So when you look at Trent Brown, Jack, we've discussed this off the air quite a bit. I would personally like to bring him in if it's not going to bust the bank too bad. But if they're able to re-sign Greg Robinson, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this, and I know we've talked off air about it. We have Greg Robinson, and, you look at what the offensive line did in the second half under Freddie Kitchens, where Baker was only, I think, pressured 9 times, or he was hit 9 times. I forget which one it was. Obviously, I don't know. Was it Greg Robinson been at left tackle over Desmond Harrison, or was it, just Freddie's scheme? I tend to believe it was more Freddie's scheme. But when I look at, the offensive tackle free agency class, Robinson, Trent Brown, and then Donovan Smith, who we'll talk about in a little bit, those are the top 3 tackles, I think, on the market. And you look at what happened last offseason, Joe Thomas retired. We were looking for a left tackle. Nate Solder was out there, and we had the debate, do the Browns go after Nate Solder? And he was obviously the left tackle before Brown. Got a big contract with the Giants, and it was a complete bust. And Solder struggled, and makes you wonder, was New England's system the reason for Solder's success? And you have to wonder, is it the success? Is that Brown's success because of the system? So, it'll be a very, very difficult situation. If you're going to put in a lot of money into Trent Brown, is he really that good? So, when you look at the Browns left tackle situation, you hope that they at least re-sign Greg Robinson. But if they don't, then obviously Dorsey's going to have to decide, do I want to sign one of these guys in free agency, or would I rather just go ahead and draft an offensive tackle in the first round or at some point in the draft, or maybe perhaps trade for one if there's one available on the market?
Or, there's the option last year where they decided to move Bitonio to left tackle and put Corbett at guard. Do you think that's something that they could revisit this offseason?
I would think so, but I think also at this point that, if they're going to do it, they need to do it day one in April and not go through something that we went through in training camp where they said that, moving Bitonio to left tackle is plan Z. which the offensive line coach said that. And then like a day later, they moved him to left tackle, and then they started shuffling everything. And ultimately, Desmond Harrison was the left tackle on week 1. So whatever they do, they need to implement it from day one and just go from that point. Whether it's putting Batonia at left tackle, Corbett at left tackle, whatever they do, they need to fix it and implement it from day one, and don't turn around and change it at the last minute like Hugh Jackson did, because that whole situation was a disaster from training camp till the second half of the season, and we don't need to go through that again.
Absolutely not. Our next message, as we move on here through this franchise tag stuff, we got 4 more guys for you, but our next message is from Jake Burns. He is the host of the Browns Film Breakdown. It cannot be overstated enough the fantastic work that Jake does with everything that he does, with doing his film breakdowns, writing for the OBR, writing for Cleveland.com. And, we've been lucky enough to have Jake on. I guess you could say we had him on before he got pretty big. And, Jake is a fantastic guy, and we appreciate what he said. And here's Jake with his message for us.
Okay. What's up, guys? Jake Burns from Browns Film Breakdown. Just wanted to take a minute to congratulate Anthony and Jack and the guys over at 1080 and on their 100th episode. It's awesome. The longevity is something to certainly be proud of, fellas. And just want to remind everybody, if you're looking for what I would say some of the best unbiased Browns coverage and a week-to-week podcast format, these are your guys to go to. They're going to give you the what I call the nuts and bolts, and then also going to give you a little bit of that humor you're looking for. So I've been a guest multiple times, and I'm happy to come on their show whenever they want me to, because it's that sort of deep football content, knowledge, understanding that I really appreciate. So once again, guys, happy 100th episode, and go Browns.
Well, hopefully we get Jake back on soon. It's been a while since we talked to him, but every time he comes on, he provides fantastic content. So hopefully we get him back on the podcast for you guys soon. All right, the next guy we're going to talk about is from the Atlanta Falcons. We don't really expect him to hit free agency. We're pretty confident he's going to get the tag, but if for some reason the Atlanta Falcons decide to not tag Grady Jarrett, like Jadeveon Clowney, I will drive the Brinks truck down to wherever he is staying and deliver all that money so that way he can join the Browns, because adding him to the interior along with Larry Ogunjobi is a move that that would just take this defensive line up to the next level for sure. Jack, when you look at Grady Jarrett, obviously he's probably the top defensive tackle on the free agent market this offseason. If for some reason he does hit free agency, how big of a mistake is that on the Atlanta Falcons' part?
Oh, it's a major mistake. I mean, he is one of the best, if not the best, interior defensive lineman in football. I mean, you've seen, and he was a 5th-round pick in 2015 out of Clemson. I mean, and you've seen the defensive lineman that Clemson has been able to produce the last few years under Dabo. I mean, what he did in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, I think he had 2 or 3 sacks in that game against Brady when they jumped out to that 28-3 lead. That just shows you how dominant he is on the interior defensive line. And, what he can be a pass rusher, but he can also, stop you at the behind the line of scrimmage for a tackle for a loss. So it's obviously something the Browns definitely need. They need some depth and they need some firepower on the interior defensive line next to Ogunjobi. So if Jarrett does become available, this should be like the number 1 target in free agency for the Browns to pursue.
And to be honest, I think it's going to be probably the number 1 target for a lot of teams, because if for some reason he does hit the free agent market, it's just a huge mistake on the Falcons' part, and there's going to be half a dozen teams, if not more, just lining up at his doorstep, waiting to sign him and bring him to their team. So we'll see what happens with him. The next guy we're going to talk about is one guy that's inside the division, and you know, it would always be nice to steal a player from one of your rivals, and that player plays for the Baltimore Ravens, and his name is C.J. Mosley. We talked with Stephen Thomas about him a little bit a few weeks ago. I think he's one that is definitely going to hit the open market. I don't think he's going to get franchise tagged by the Ravens. So if he were to hit the open market, Jack, you know, adding a player of that caliber is one thing, but weakening one of your divisional foes who won the division is icing on the cake if they were to sign him.
Definitely. When you look at the linebacker free agent class, you know, Mosley is at the very top of it, but there are some very nice options there with Anthony Barr of the Vikings, Jordan Hicks of the Eagles. But like you said, if you can pluck him from the division rival, you know, that would be a great get, obviously. You know, you see the tide is turning in the AFC North right now. You know, the Bengals are probably going to be rebuilding. The Steelers are a mess right now. They're pretty much what the Browns were the last several years. It looks like at this point, but I mean, they're still going to be a threat as long as Roethlisberger's there. And it's pretty much the Browns and the Ravens are at the top of the AFC North now. You know, it'll be interesting to see what they do. Obviously, they're under new leadership with Ozzie Newsome stepping down. Harbaugh signed a contract extension. And then you have Lamar Jackson at quarterback. But Mosley's been there the last several years, has been a key part of their defense. You know, I can't imagine them letting them go, but if he does, you know, the Browns need linebacker help. When you look at it with, you know, Kirksey getting older, Collins is probably going to be cut here in the next couple weeks before free agency. You know, outside of Joe Schobert and Jannard Avery, they need depth at the linebacker position. And, you know, when you look at Steve Wilkes, he's had great linebackers, whether it's in Carolina or Arizona. So, you know, outside of Schobert, we need some more, you know, guys at linebacker, and Mosley would definitely be a great addition there.
If you're the Baltimore Ravens, who would you rather franchise to protect more, John Brown or C.J. Mosley? Because I think Brown would be the only other candidate on the Ravens to get that franchise tag.
You know, when you look at it, it's John Brown, the receiver, right? Okay, yeah, when you look at it, you can get wide receivers, I think, whether it's in the draft or you can go get somebody else in free agency. It's tough to find defensive guys, especially, you know, guys that know the system, guys that know like what to expect out of when you're in that organization for so long. So when I look at it, if I had to choose between Mosley and Brown, I'd pick Mosley just because you're familiar with him. You know what kind of player he is, what kind of leader he is on the defensive side of the ball. John Brown's only been there for 1 year. Yeah, he's a explosive playmaker, but I think you can find those guys, whether it's in the draft or you can bring someone else in via free agency or a trade potentially.
And I think it's extremely important for Baltimore to keep C.J. Mosley because Terrell Suggs is also a free agent, and you know, he's 36 years old right now, and you have to wonder when that changing of the guard is going to be on defense. You know, for the longest time, they had Ray Lewis. Ray Lewis retired. Terrell Suggs took over as leader, and you have to wonder if maybe it's time for Terrell Suggs to move on and C.J. Mosley to take over the leadership on that defense. That's something that they've been very consistent on since they got to Baltimore in 99 or 95, whatever it was. But they've done a fantastic job with that defense, and it'll be interesting to see what they determine to do with C.J. Mosley. Maybe they'll get a contract extension done before the franchise tag period ends, and that way they don't even have to worry about it. All right, the next guy we talked about a little bit earlier, but he is the last pass rusher we're going to talk about, and that is Dante Fowler, the defensive end for the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams acquired him before the trade deadline from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and you can honestly say that he made a tremendous impact on that Rams defense. They already had Aaron Donald on that defensive line, but they brought in Dante Fowler, and he had a heck of a time there with the Rams, and he was able to play off of Aaron Donald, and obviously Donald commands a lot of double teams, so that opened up some one-on-ones for Dante Fowler, and he was able to perform very well. Jack, with all the players that the Rams have signed over the last couple seasons, you would have to imagine that they'll run into some kind of cap problem here soon. Do you think it would just be wise for them to maybe avoid giving Dante Fowler the franchise tag so it doesn't cripple them in this free agency period where I can't imagine they have too much money to spend?
I mean, looking at it right now, they only have around $25 million in cap space. Ndamukong Suh's a free agent. LaMarcus Joyner's a free agent. Roger Saffold's a free agent. They have some guys that they could actually look to bring back. I don't think Suh will be back. I think he goes elsewhere. And honestly, I think Fowler goes elsewhere too. When you look at the pass rushing market, Fowler, has been productive, but he hasn't been that productive. But I expect he could definitely get a significant contract from a team out there. Los Angeles took a chance on him at the trade deadline, brought him in. Like you said, he was surrounded by all that talent on the defensive front, and he capitalized on it. Between the regular season and the playoffs, he had 3.5 sacks. He had 8 QB hits, 8 tackles for a loss. He was disruptive. He held that defense, get to a point where they were at the Super Bowl. They were they had a chance to win, but obviously New England had their number and took advantage of it late in the game. I just don't know if Fowler is a guy I would really want on this team. He's had some troubled past. He's had an injury history. If I would take all the other guys over him, but he could be a guy that he needs another opportunity, and we've seen it lately. Like Dorsey's not afraid to take chances on guys and give them another chance. So, Fowler's obviously still young. He's 24, 25 years old. So, all he needs is one team that he can settle in and make it his home, because obviously he's been bounced around in the last year between 2 teams. So if Cleveland could be that team that molds him into the pass rusher he was expected to be coming out of Florida, then, that would be great. But I just like the other options right now currently.
If you had to rank the 6 guys that we talked about, DeMarcus Lawrence, Dee Ford, Jadeveon Clowney, Frank Clark, Trey Flowers, and Dante Fowler, all as pass rushing options, how would you rank them?
I would go Lawrence. I would go Clowney. I'd go Clark, Flowers, Ford, and Fowler. That would be my top 6.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think, obviously, I think DeMarcus is the top choice. I don't think there's any way he is free agency. You can't understate the talent of Clowney and really all these guys. These guys are all extremely talented, and if the Browns are able to add one of these 6 guys, it's a home run of an offseason, because you're adding that other guy across from Myles Garrett. You can build the rest of the defensive line, the depth through the draft. You can add linebackers in the draft as well. So, the Browns have a lot of choices, and if they're able to sign one of these guys, it'd be a huge home run for them. All right, the last guy we're going to talk about, and probably not too long, because there's probably zero chance the Tampa Bay Buccaneers let Donovan Smith hit free agency. It's almost certain that they're going to franchise tag. But if for some reason, Jack, Donovan Smith is not franchise tag, I would tend to think he'll probably get it would be between him and Trent Brown getting the highest paid contract for left tackle on the market. But could you see? I don't want to say could you see, but because I think it would be pretty obvious if he does hit the open market. I would tend to think that the Browns would definitely be on his doorstep if they don't have something resolved with Greg Robinson by then. Yeah,
if Donovan Smith becomes available, the Browns have to jump on that, because while he's not, I don't think he's reached his peak yet. He has proven that he can stay healthy. He hasn't missed a start in 3 years. he's making strides. He's getting better. Like I said, he hasn't reached his peak yet as a left tackle, but Tampa feels confident enough to where, they don't think I don't think they think he's worth like top left tackle money, but they depend on him and he's been reliable for them. Keeping Jameis upright for the most part. Jameis hasn't been the perfect quarterback, but Jameis has been able to stay healthy. He's just missed games because he's an idiot. But if he becomes available, I could see, him getting that 12 to 13 million that ESPN mentioned he would get on the open market. He might even get more than that because left tackle is such a needed position in the NFL. When you have a franchise quarterback, you have to keep him protected. So I would think, with the Browns having the cap money that they have, he would definitely be a target for him. I also think, the Colts need to continue to build the offensive line to keep Andrew Luck healthy, because Andrew Luck had an incredible comeback season, but you want to make sure that he's healthy for the next 10 years because you have so much invested into him. So if Donovan Smith's available, I would expect the Browns to at least, call and see if he's interested in coming to Cleveland, but in no way do I think Tampa's going to let him go.
All right. One last question about these guys that could potentially be tagged. Last year the Browns traded for Jarvis Landry after he was tagged by the Miami Dolphins. Are there any of these guys that we talked about that you could see getting tagged and traded this offseason?
Honestly, I can't really see any of them because when you look at it, Lawrence and Clowney are vital to their defenses. D Ford's vital to the Chiefs' defense. I just look at that list of guys that we've gone over. I don't really see any tag or trade scenarios. I just think, and it doesn't happen very often. I think 2008 it happened with Castle getting traded from New England to Kansas City. Obviously last year, Landry getting tagged by Miami and traded to Cleveland. It doesn't really happen often, and it's technically illegal from my understanding. I know there's the buzz going around about Nick Foles getting tagged and traded. The NFL implemented the franchise tag in order for teams to be able to keep their players. So if they don't intend to keep them, there's no reason they should be franchise tagging them, and it doesn't happen very often. So unless there's it's a collaboration effort between the agent and the team. So I honestly don't see any of these guys getting tagged and traded. Besides Nick Foles, obviously, but we didn't really discuss him because the Browns don't need a quarterback.
I know it's nice to not need that and to discuss really any quarterback. Maybe a backup quarterback, and maybe we'll talk about that on the next episode. All right, our next message is from Brian Fonfara. Brian is the host of the Pack to the Future podcast. Since the Browns have kind of become Green Bay South, with the additions of Dorsey and Highsmith and Wolf, along with getting Demarius Randall as well, and also J.C. Treader. There have been a lot of Green Bay Packers ties here. We've been gracious enough to be joined by Brian multiple times to discuss the Browns and the Packers and the connections that we have, and so Brian decided to send us a message, and here it is.
What's up, guys? My name is Brian Fonfara. I do podcasting for the Pack to the Future podcast and writing and management for packtothefuture.com, and I'm here to talk about the guys over at 1085 Gridiron. These guys, Anthony and Jack, they do incredible work over there. Amazing that you've gotten to 100 episodes. It's amazing what you guys have gone through to get to 100 episodes. Gotta give you credit for sticking through it. I don't know. My persistence would have been tested several times at that point if I had to go through what you guys have gone through as fans. But I'm happy for you guys that things are starting to look up. You guys deserve it. It's always fun being part of your podcast. You guys always make it light. You ask all the right questions. You ask a lot of questions. You do seriously great work over there. So do keep it up. We appreciate you, and we look forward to working more with you in the future.
Well, because it is our 100th episode, we thought that we should debut a new segment that we're going to keep from now on. And the segment is called 4 Downs. What it is we have 4 topics. We won't spend more than 2.5 minutes on each topic. Kind of blow through these relatively quickly, but they're just kind of random questions that don't have to do with the Browns. They might sometimes, but these ones don't particularly do. Jack, in our first down question, do you see both Odell Beckham Jr. and Antonio Brown getting moved this offseason?
I say yes. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And, you look, obviously Antonio Brown's going to be moved. And, we've seen the ongoing saga with him, and he seems to keep digging himself deeper into a hole where he's hurting his trade value. But I do ultimately think that, and obviously Pittsburgh agrees, that it's just best for them to move on. When you look at Beckham, the buzz was, Jay Glazer was asked in a mailbag, what's your bold prediction? And he said Odell Beckham's going to get traded. And now everybody assumes Odell Beckham's going to get traded. But it seems like, and then there's been more reports coming out that the Patriots tried to make a move. I think it was the Rams tried to go after him, and there was another team that I can't think of. So obviously the Giants were fielding calls. Maybe the Browns were that other team. And, do I expect the Browns to probably make a play for them? Yes. Do I expect us to get them? No. But I do expect that arguably 2 of the 3 best wide receivers in the league are going to be moved this offseason. And it seems like this could be a shift where the NFL is starting to become like the NBA, where superstars might be on the move more times than not.
I have a follow-up to this, and I kind of had this idea the other day, and I kind of been toying around with putting it on Twitter, so I figured, well, we'll just put it on the podcast and see what Jack thinks about this. What would you say for the Steelers to send Antonio Brown and draft selections to the New York Giants for Odell Beckham? Do you think that would be they could work out a fair swap there, and would it be beneficial for both teams?
Man, that could be something. Obviously, you're swapping wide receivers that are on long-term contracts, although Antonio Brown is making it known that he wants a new contract, and if the Giants trade Odell Beckham, there's dead cap they have to take on, so it doesn't make sense financially. But if you just take that aside, you're swapping out 2 of the best wide receivers in the league. They both get fresh new starts in new cities with new teams. Pittsburgh doesn't skip a beat. Ultimately, they have to incorporate Beckham into the offense. With the Giants, they incorporate Brown into the offense, which would be a perfect time to draft a quarterback, which they should have done last year, but that's a whole other topic. It could make sense, but I don't know how likely a deal like that would happen.
All right, well, let's move on to second down. And there's a pretty big trade that went down. It's not official until the new league year, but the Baltimore Ravens sent Joe Flacco to the Denver Broncos. He'll more than likely be their starting quarterback. I mean, I can't see him losing to Case Keenum, but you never know. Jack, was this a good move, or who is this the better move for, the Baltimore Ravens or the Denver Broncos?
It's a better move for the Baltimore Ravens because they get out of that contract that's kind of strapped them financially the last couple years, and it's made it difficult for them to build the team around Flacco. For Denver, it doesn't make a lot of sense because they already had a bridge-type quarterback in Case Keenum, who I expect they'll move before the league year or they'll just cut him. I still fully expect Denver to draft a quarterback. Obviously, Baltimore is going forward with Lamar Jackson. They'll need a backup quarterback. Keep an eye on Tyrod Taylor, formerly with Baltimore, was with Cleveland this past season. I can see him going there and being a backup to Lamar Jackson. But, for both sides, it seems like a good deal. But I would go with Baltimore just because financially it gives them flexibility and able to retain guys like C.J. Mosley, who we talked about earlier.
All right, third down question. The NFL and Colin Kaepernick came to a settlement. There's a undisclosed amount of money, although it's been estimated, I believe, between $60 and $1 million, which will get some money from each team in that case. He has to sign a no disclosure clause, so he's not allowed to say anything about it. Was this a win for the NFL, or was this a win for Colin Kaepernick, in your opinion?
Oh, it was a win for Colin Kaepernick. I think, the fact that he was not in the National Football League. Now, I think probably the collusion case had something to do with that, but the fact that he hasn't been on an NFL roster in the last 2 years is a joke. I mean, you could see it so many times when a team signed a quarterback, and you're thinking, that guy got a job, but Colin Kaepernick didn't. And I don't want to, get in this long debate about Kaepernick. I think he's a good quarterback. He led a team to a Super Bowl appearance. He struggled his last season in San Francisco, but the team around him wasn't that well built, obviously, with Chip Kelly. So I think, the fact that the NFL settled with him to essentially push him away makes me think that there was collusion against Colin Kaepernick. His lawyer says that he thinks he's going to get a shot in the NFL. The Panthers, the Patriots have been mentioned. There's a team that we cover on here, Anthony, and I don't, this could be a debate for another time, that needs a backup quarterback, and I'm talking about the Cleveland Browns. Kaepernick deserves to be in the league. I know he's been out 2 years, but, if he gets back in the league and proves he can play, then, that's going to make his case strong, obviously. But if he comes back in the league and struggles, then all of this will be for nothing, and you're going to have a lot of people saying, I told you so, Kaepernick wasn't good. But I do think it was a win on his side.
Yeah, we might have to discuss that on a future podcast. That's an interesting rabbit hole I think we should go down at some point. I think this was a win for the NFL solely because none of the text messages, emails are going to get released, and I think if those were to get released from the owner side, things would be pretty chaotic in terms of the NFL. So I think this was a win for the NFL to get that non-disclosure thing signed and fork up a couple $2 to $3 million for each team. All right, fourth down. The Super Bowl was played a few weeks ago. However, we still have football. The AAF has been playing football. We're headed into week 3 this weekend. Jack, what are your early impressions of the Alliance Football League, and do you think that this league is good enough to capture fans' interest during the off season?
Oh, I like it so far. I do think it's it's capturing the fans' attention when their debut game outdrew the NBA on their first night. You see people talking about it. Pro Football Focus is grading players. The last 2 weekends you've seen people talking about football, while there's other sporting events going on. The NBA All-Star Game, Daytona 500, PGA Golf is back in the form. Even WWE has been discussed, but people are talking about the AAF. I think this is a good developmental league for the NFL. It's going to get, guys that, had a chance, fell out, get another chance. It's putting other guys back in the spotlight, most notably former Browns running back Trent Richardson, who's off to a good start in that league, and it's great to see him having success on the football field again. I like some of the rules, like no extra points. You have to go for 2. The tricky fourth down, going for it on fourth down situation. I like that they're letting guys play. Like if there's big hits, you don't see penalties. Like this is different. I just want to see if the NFL is going to take any of the ideas that the AAF has put together and adapts them to the NFL game. I could see it being good for football. Obviously, there's been the controversy about the payroll situation already and how they've had to get a new investor, invest some money into it. But it'll be interesting to see how this pans out as we head into the future, and then also the fact that the XFL is coming next year as well. So football all year is always a good thing, but I just hope that these leagues don't get any ideas of trying to compete with the NFL, because like we see with the USFL back in the 80s, it isn't going to work because the NFL will always be king.
I think it would be a huge win for this league to eventually expand to the point, and this could be 8 to 10 years down the road, but to be it where each NFL team has their own alliance football team, kind of like a minor league system, to where they're able to put some of their later round draft picks in there, guys that they have rights to, just so that they can get these guys experience and ready to play when it comes to training camp and ready to compete for the actual roster spot. Because you see every year, there's 250 players drafted. Only a certain percent of those make the roster every year. If teams were able to control rights to their players, but have them play in this league instead, after the NFL season is over, I think it's something that could be extremely beneficial to both the players, of guys who are still trying to make it, the AFL or the AAF, in terms of growing and expanding and notoriety, and ultimately, I would think it would enhance the NFL product down the road.
Definitely, I think that's the goal for this league. And you look at who's involved in this league. Bill Polian, longtime Hall of Fame executive. Troy Polamalu's the head of player relations. Hines Ward's a player relations executive. Jared Allen's involved. Justin Tuck's involved. You have Dick Ebersol and Charlie Ebersol, who have been familiar with football because they both work for NBC, who has had NFL coverage for years. I mean, I think the goal is at some point to, I don't know if the NFL would purchase this, but you would, like you said, turn this into a developmental league, like a minor league system, where you do send your late round guys and your practice squad guys to work with this league during the off season, because this league's going to be run during the spring, right after football ends. So, and then those guys can go right back into the off season program with the NFL after this season's over. So, if this works, it's a great thing for football, because you see the Major League Baseball has a great minor league system and how they operate. The NBA's getting there with the G League. I mean, if the NFL can somehow form a minor league system, it's only going to make the sport better and more popular as the years go on into the future, because it seems like, football seems to be dying because of the health issue, but I think it's dying because you're not getting enough talent. But if you have a minor league system, then you'll have that opportunity to develop more talent.
Absolutely. I think it could be a huge win just for us as football fans if it enhances the product down the road. All right, Jack, our first 4 downs segment is in the books. Thoughts?
I like it. I think what we should do is alternate it every week, where like one week you'll ask me the questions and I'll answer them, and then the next week I'll ask you the questions and you answer them. I mean, what I want to do is get your opinion on things too. Like, I just don't want to, like, you know what I'm saying? I just don't want it to be like just me.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, we extend it
for some reason.
Give it like 5 minutes.
I tend to keep my opinions to myself a lot. I really need to expand it, and it's something we've been working on over, the first 100 episodes, and and as long as the next 100, maybe I'll share my opinion a little bit more.
Yep.
All right, Jay. As we wrap up this 100th episode of this podcast, you have any thoughts on our first 100 ones? I know we just talked about a little bit, but do you have anything you want to say?
It's been a great ride. It's amazing how it's been 2 years already. I can think back to the first episode when we were talking about the 2017 draft and were the Browns going to draft Myles Garrett, or were they going to shock everyone and take Trubisky or Watson or somebody else? But now we're rolling into 2019. We have another big offseason up ahead, and then the season where the Browns are going on the playoffs. It's crazy how these 2 years have flown by, and here's to hopefully 100 and many more episodes down the road. It's been fun working with you, man.
I'm just glad that 2017 draft didn't turn into Davis Webb like I wanted.
Thank God.
My history picking quarterbacks is absolutely terrible, which is good news for Browns fans, because Baker Mayfield was not my number one quarterback, so we're all safe for now, thankfully. When it comes to the first 100 episodes, I can't believe we're at this point. We've been doing this for almost 2 years now. Jack, I mentioned earlier, Jack and I have been good friends for over 3 years now since he came to write for me over on Forever Rebuilding, which is no longer in existence. But it's been a fun ride so far. I think we've endured the worst of it that we'll ever endure in talking about the Browns. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you. Going through that first season that we were together, that 0-16 season, I think we contemplated at one point stopping because it was absolutely depressing to get on here and talk about the Browns every week and dealing with that 0-16 season. But thankfully, we have hope now. We have Baker Mayfield. We have Nick Chubb. We have so many other contributors. Hopefully our new head coach, Freddie Kitchen, pans out. And, this upcoming season, hopefully we're talking about playoff football on this podcast, which we talked a little bit of it this past season while we still had a chance there. But I think we're going to really be able to hone in and focus on that on our third season of this podcast. And, hopefully maybe we'll be talking about the Super Bowl and the Browns at some point here in the near future. All right, Jack, guess we got it out of here. Go ahead and plug everything you got.
As always, you guys can follow me on Twitter at jmccurrycle. Check out my site, thenorthcoastsports.com, and also check out my guest spot on the Paul Brown International Browns podcast this week. Got to sit down with Paul and Jack, and we went over the tight end position and the 3-year outlook as it pertains to the Browns at that position. So go check that out. It was great sitting down with those guys. It was a blast to be on the International Browns podcast, so definitely go check that out.
Be sure to follow me over on Twitter at Anthony Joki. Be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter and on Facebook at 1085 Gridiron. You can find our podcast on pretty much any platform that you can think of. If you liked our new 4 Down segment, let us know on iTunes while we're viewing our podcast. We'd absolutely appreciate it if you dropped us a 5-star review. Let us know how we did in our first 4 Down segment. We'd absolutely appreciate it. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anything you think of. And with all that, as I've left you for the first 99 episodes, I will leave you with this at the end of our 100th episode, and that is, and most importantly, go Browns.